Okay, hello. My name is Claire Sudbury. I've been a software engineer for more than 25 years, and I'm a technical coach, which means that I work with teams to help them improve their software development practices. I think it's really important that software teams are open and aware of the fact that everybody's brains work differently. I think it's particularly important because I'm autistic and I have ADHD. There are lots of strengths associated with autism, and they do tend to be about pattern spotting, recognition, logical thinking, all of which are really useful for a software engineer. I also have strengths that are associated with ADHD, and I don't think it's a coincidence that I'm a software engineer. So, being a software engineer is something that works particularly well particularly for people who are autistic. So the autistic side of me, I'm a very methodical thinker. I'm very thorough. I'm very good at spotting patterns. And all of those things are very useful. I'm a very logical, very analytical thinker. They're very useful things for software engineers. So it's not surprising that a lot of software engineers are on the autistic spectrum. But then I also have ADHD, and what that means is that I'm impulsive, I'm creative, and which is actually a good thing because it means that I will try new things. I will have ideas. I'm full of ideas. I have too many ideas. My head is full of ideas constantly that are overflowing. And that also works for building software. It's very useful to be full of ideas and to be full of energy and creativity. So it's really not unusual. But I was 55 when I was diagnosed with autism and ADHD. So what that tells you is there are going to be a lot of people in this industry who are neurodivergent and don't know it. So it's certainly not our job as team members to go around diagnosing our colleagues, but it is important that we recognise that there are a lot of people in this industry who are neurodivergent, whose brains work differently from the norm, and therefore sometimes they will have challenges. A lot of the challenges that they have are not even necessarily because there's something wrong with them. A lot of the time it's because we all live in a world that was built for neurotypical people. And so a lot of the disabilities that neurodivergent people face are just as much about how society is organised and designed for neurotypical people rather than for neurodivergent people as it is about people actually really having kind of, overarching neutral disabilities. Not that we don't. So, there are things which challenge me. And if my colleagues know that those are things that cause problems for me, then they can help me with those things and everybody benefits. Because my team members don't benefit if I'm struggling and suffering, because it means that I'm not working as effectively and that affects the whole team. So we all benefit from understanding that we all have problems. And that's actually completely regardless of neurodivergence. We all benefit from acknowledging that we all have problems and that we all sometimes need help and that we can help each other. And when we help each other, we all do a better job. So it's really helpful for teams to be aware of neurodivergence, to be aware that they might have colleagues who might struggle in lots of different ways. And I think it's not even a question of, go and read a manual. Go and find out everything there is to know about autism and ADHD and all of the other challenges that people might face, because everybody's individual. So what's much more useful is to simply create an environment in which your colleagues are able to be honest about challenges they face and ask your colleagues about what challenges they face. What do you find difficult? What kind of environment do you thrive in? And those questions can be asked of anybody. It doesn't matter whether they think of themselves as neurodivergent, whether they don't think of themselves as neurodivergent. Everybody has things that they find hard, but everybody also has environments that they know they thrive in. And so these are questions that teams can ask of each other and that people in positions of responsibility can ask on a one-to-one basis of the people that they are responsible for. And we can all find out more about each other as long as we create environments in which we know we won't be punished if we're honest about the challenges that we face. There is no typical person. everybody is different. It's really important to understand that everybody is different. And some people have challenges, and some people have strengths, and some people will thrive in certain circumstances, and some people won't thrive in some circumstances. If you have a team that has neurodivergent people in it, chances are those people are bringing really strong skills to your team. But they won't necessarily be able to use those skills if they're not being given an excellent environment. And what's really interesting is that this applies to everybody. This isn't just true of neurodivergent people. Everybody will have conditions in which they thrive. And if you can find out what those conditions are, then you can help your colleagues to thrive, which means that you can help your team to thrive. And everybody also has conditions in which they don't thrive. You mustn't make assumptions because everybody is different. It was Temple Grandin, who is an autistic woman who's written at least one book about being autistic, who came up with the idea of sliders on a mixing desk. And this doesn't just apply to autism, but it's a particularly good one for autism. Is if you take an autistic individual, there will be various traits. If you imagine those traits as settings on a mixing desk, then everybody's sliders will be set at different positions. So some people's sliders will be really high up, and that might mean that they're oversensitive to certain stimuli, for instance. So I'm particularly sensitive to auditory stimuli. I really notice noises. There becomes a level at which I'm very easily overwhelmed if there's a lot of background noise. I can't stand it if people are talking behind me while somebody is talking in front of me. I hate it when people talk in audiences because I'm like, well, now how can I listen to that? Because there's that as well. And it's very difficult for me to filter that out. Some autistic people are undersensitive, so they won't notice certain stimuli. And then there are lots of other traits as well. But every single autistic person will have their sliders set at different settings. So there will be some things that they're not bothered about at all. Their slider will be right in the middle, around the same level as somebody who's neurotypical. So you have to be very careful. You have to make sure that you understand what people's challenges are, but you also understand what their strengths are, how they are going to be absolutely excellent and make incredible things happen for your team, as well as know what they need in order to thrive, in order to really show those excellent strengths. And that isn't just true of neurodivergent people, that's true of everybody. It's actually really hard to be a member of a software team without also being a teacher, because chances are you have to explain things to your colleagues, to your fellow engineers. You have to help them understand things that you know and they don't. They will also be teaching you constantly. You'll also be teaching other technical people within the team and within the company. You'll also be teaching non-technical people. You'll have to explain things to people who, in different kind of language, to people who are not technical. And if you pay attention to that, then you might also notice that it's really rewarding. And you can deliberately try to do more of it because it's a good feeling to help people understand things. It's a good feeling to be there at somebody else's aha moment. So there's that, but there's also the fact that when you teach, you deepen your own understanding. So in my current role, I am a teacher, and I have been a teacher over the course of my life in several different contexts. When I was at university all those years ago, and even before I went to university, when I was a child, my ambition was to become a teacher, a school teacher. And I always thought that was what I was going to do. But it was while I was at university that I met actual teachers and they put me off the idea. They said, it's not what you think, because there's so much extra politics and stress and difficulties. And so I didn't become a teacher. So my journey is different in the sense that I always had teaching in my sights. And I have always taught informally. It comes natural to me to help people learn. I enjoy helping people learn. What I find is that teaching helps me to understand. So teaching has many benefits. And the reason I'm going to talk about the benefits is because I will also argue that even people who aren't like me, who haven't always wanted to be a teacher, should consider introducing teaching as an element in their work, if it isn't there already. If I want to learn something, then I will look for an opportunity to teach it. I've more than once arranged a workshop or a class taught by me in a topic that I know nothing about, deliberately, because then I will have to learn it in order to teach it. It was a few months ago now, but when I proposed a workshop on the topic of TDD and LLMs, it was based on the fact that I'd been to a conference talk in the UK by a guy from DEFRA, which is a government organisation, talking about how they were using LLMs in a production environment and that it had forced them to do more TDD. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. This is the spur that I need to get me to start experimenting with LLMs, because up to that point I hadn't. So right, okay, I'll pitch a workshop on it and then I will have to learn how to do it. And then I spent the last 4 months learning how to do it, reading tons and tons and tons about it, watching videos about it, doing it myself, because I knew that I was going to teach this workshop. And in the process of teaching it, I've had to have a really good understanding of it, because I knew I was going to have to explain it to other people. But that's really satisfying for me, because it means that now I have a really good in-depth knowledge of it, which I wouldn't have had if I hadn't known that I was going to have to teach it. The final interesting piece of information is that I did become a high school maths teacher. After having been a software engineer for 12 years, I became disillusioned with the industry. I wasn't being given the opportunities that I wanted. I'd had children, my career was stagnating, I was made redundant, and I thought, you know what, I've had it with IT. I don't want to work in IT anymore, and I've always wanted to be a teacher. So I retrained as a high school maths teacher. Unfortunately, didn't go brilliantly. The main problem was that I really struggled to maintain order in a room full of 30 teenagers. Now that I know that I'm autistic and have ADHD, that is actually no surprise. It's very difficult for me to multitask. It's very difficult for me to pay attention to 30 teenagers simultaneously. It's very difficult for me to maintain order. So that didn't last long. And when it ended, I was like, well, now what am I going to do? And I already had 12 years of experience as a software engineer. So I came back into the industry, but with this renewed enthusiasm for learning. And I just wanted to learn. And suddenly the learning became absolutely fundamental to my work as a software engineer and the teaching. And what I often say now is that what's fantastic about my current career is I get to be a teacher without having to be a teacher.